My name's Rachel Heng, and I am the author of the novel Suicide Club. It's a kind of speculative novel set in near future New York where life expectancies average 300 years. I also write short stories, essays. I finished my MFA at the Michener Center for Writers at UT Austin, where I studied fiction and playwriting as well. I always feel like the minority when I say this because everyone says, oh, I've always wanted to be a writer, or like, I started writing when I was a child. I never wrote until I think I started writing when I was maybe 25 or 26. And that's like, it sounds early, but in the scheme of meeting lots of writers, I feel like it is kind of relatively late actually. But I always loved reading. Like I love books and go to the library all the time. And I steal all my family's library cards so I could get like extra books. It never occurred to me that I could write, or like that writing was like a thing you could do. And maybe that's partly my upbringing and sort of the family I grew up in. And I didn't know anyone doing anything creative. It was very much like, oh, you need to like get a job, earn money, support your parents kind of situation. It didn't ever occur to me when I was living in Singapore that you could be a writer, you could write fiction. When I was in college, I met my now husband. He was the one who sort of pushed me into it, or like first talked about it. He was like, oh, I think you should be a writer. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. Like those are dead people from the 19th century. Even though obviously I knew that writers existed today, but somehow I just never registered. I didn't really take him up on it. And it took sort of 5 or 6 years, I think. I had graduated and I was working for the government of Singapore because I had taken a scholarship where they paid for my college education. So then I was working for them in London, doing a job that was great. Just, I don't know, I really missed literature and just like using my mind and spirit in that way. At that point, my husband was still telling me like, oh, maybe you should try writing fiction. And I think he caught me in sort of a vulnerable place where I was like, what am I doing with my life? Am I going to work in this office forever? That was like, I think it was late 2014. And I wrote my first short story then. And then I started writing short stories, got, really into it, loved doing it. It was like nothing I'd ever done before. So then I just kept going, eventually ending up writing my novel and then selling it, very fortunately. And then I left my job to go do a master's in creative writing. Of course, like lawyer, doctor, whatever, the like standard fields, but failing that, then a stable job, right? Like a job where you get like a stable salary and you can like support yourself and your family. I was raised like by my mom. We were never wealthy. Money was always sort of an issue. I knew that I would have to get a scholarship if I wanted to go to college, for example. That was an added aspect to it. Like there was like the Asian culture, like generally, oh, don't do anything creative. And then there was also like my socioeconomic background where I was like, I have to do something that will put me in like financially stable position, which I think like many people face. Obviously to do like anything creative is hugely privileged, being able to be in that position where you can pursue that. I did face a ton of those pressures and it was like completely understandable. When I finally did decide, my mom might have cried maybe, I don't know. I don't remember. It was like a big conversation. But by then I was like in my late 20s. I was like, well, I'm independent. I'm sort of like, I've saved money. Like, oh, I'm fine. I got into this fully funded program. Like, don't worry, I'm not going to be draining my savings to do this or like going to debt or anything. I think it is a constant tension, probably for like many people from similar backgrounds. That's so interesting. That's such an interesting question. I feel like all the time, I think every story you start out with a certain intention for every story. And then once you actually start writing it, then it starts going wrong, or like things start not cohering to what you hope it's going to be or what you think you are writing towards. That's probably when things actually start getting interesting. My conscious mind is a lot stupider than my unconscious mind, where all the strangest stuff happens. Yeah, I think things go wrong very often, and I try to embrace that as much as possible, which is really difficult because I'm a control freak. And I know that in the times that I've managed to like let it go, I've often ended up with stories that feel a lot more organic in some way, or like interesting in an organic way. Probably teleportation, because I get like motion sickness really badly in pretty much any vehicle. If I didn't have to transport myself, that would be awesome. I think most of my writing tends to be sort of world-driven or sort of setting-driven, and often I can't begin a story until I see the place or feel the place or get like a sense of the atmosphere of the place. So even if that's a sense of the room in which my character lives, or the smell of the air, or like the kind of plants that grow there. And I often come into stories through atmosphere and like inanimate objects before character and voice. I tend to write from a somewhat detached perspective. I don't write first person very much. I usually write in third person. I feel very much more comfortable with third person. I'm interested in like narrative distance and maybe being a little bit less transparent with how characters are feeling or like why they're doing certain things, and being a little bit more on the outside and watching things unfold from a distance rather than being extremely close. I don't think third person is better than first person. I love reading lots of first person narratives. I find first person very difficult because maybe it's just my personality. I'm immediately suspicious of first person narrators. I don't know why. Like even when I read first person stories, I'm always like, okay, but why are you telling me this? I don't fully believe your version of the truth. And usually I think the first person stories I love the most are the ones that then show that break in awareness. This is the world as the first person narrator knows it. This is what he thinks of himself. And then the outside world intrudes on that and shows you the tension between his perspectives and other people's. Lean into like whatever you love, honestly. I think there's a lot of pressure, not just for young writers, but like all writers, just any writer starting out. You know, there's just all kinds of external pressures. Like you think about publishing or, you know, your friends in workshop who are going to read your thing. Is first person or third person better? There's just like no right answer. For every craft dictum that you come across where someone's like, always do this or never do this, you can find an example of someone doing it beautifully. It's like making it work. So I think the most difficult thing when you're starting out is just sort of trying to find your own true north and figuring out what you believe as a writer, like what you care about, what really speaks to you, like what is the sort of writing that you want to do, like who are the writers that really get you excited, even if it's not what people think is publishable or right or literary or like, you know, just all the labels. So you're like, oh, I need to do these things because XYZ said that they were good or correct. So I think that's just like the pressure that everyone deals with. Oh my God, what an awful thing to have to decide. You know, it's very cliche, but probably chicken rice, like Hainanese chicken rice, but the good one, like that's from a very specific stall in a very specific hawker center that I know, that Hainanese chicken rice. It's just objectively the best food you can eat. I mean, yeah, it's like the best dish I've ever had. I'm never sick of it. If I ate it every day, I would die of a heart attack at like 45. It's a little bit of a tourist stereotype, but like if you get the good chicken rice, and often like chicken rice is not very good, that's the problem, right? I wouldn't just eat like any chicken rice. You're like, what kind of rice do you prefer? Do you want it more oily, less oily? What kind of chicken do you want? Do you want it firm, or do you want kind of like the slightly more shredded chicken that like absorbs the sauce? Anyway, it's like, yeah.